Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of Provoking Tuesdays, which is a public forum where we discuss topics that interest us. I'm Abdullah Zafar.
I'm Zain Usmani.
I'm Hijab Fatima.
And I'm Ushna Batool.
And today's topic is on empathy. Before we begin, I would just like to say that you can be part of filming this podcast. You can reach us in the comments or you can find us on campus. If you're interested in being part of the podcast, then you can come to the film studio when it's filmed and you can be part of the core group who sits here. The topic that we select, we usually pre-decide, and it's something that interests all of us. And you can also suggest topics or be part of the filming.
Before we start talking about the topic, let's ask when did Thought Provoking Tuesdays even started?
So I think Thought Provoking Tuesday started 2 years ago. It started with both of you when you were freshmen.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the first time that it began, and so I had started to teach classes at that time, and apart from the computer science courses, I thought that there should be, for me, an outlet to have intellectual conversations, and I wasn't finding that in my class. One outcome of that was that sometimes in class I would start talking about random things that I shouldn't be talking about, and then the students would be wondering, why is he talking about this in class? And I was like, I really need an outlet for this somewhere else. And so I think I reach out to Areeb, so Areeb is, by the way, another core member who is not here today because of some personal misgivings about the theme of today's topic. So we can address that as well in a minute. So anyways, I think I reached out to him, or somehow I posted it on Yammer.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, cafeteria mein, lunch hour mein, let's meet up.
And you were giving free fries as well at that time.
Free lunch.
Yeah.
Free lunch, by the way. I was offering free lunch.
Yeah.
I missed
Which none of you were availing for some reason.
Yeah.
You were all very shocked. But I was like, hey, khao khana, like I'm gonna get you food. So I think I was deciding the topics at that time.
Yes.
So that semester, every week we met, and that was on Tuesdays as well, if I remember.
I
Yeah,
think.
change hota tha, pata nahi,
Tuesday or
hota tha,
Thursday,
ya
it used
Thursday
to be
hota
a
tha.
golden hour.
And I would select a topic, I would post it on the Yammer, and then a bunch of you would show up. So we had regulars like Areeb, like both of you.
I was
and
not regular. I just had.
that semester you weren't.
Yeah,
But so फिर वो 2 semesters हमने किया. So both the years we did it, and we had like the core group was the same. Zain wasn't in the core group. Zain's like first timer.
Yeah, I had absolute.
और फिर इस semester Ushna reached out and said कि podcast करते हैं, and then we decided कि इसी चीज़ को जो हमारा tradition है 2 साल का, we'll just convert that into a podcast.
Right. Okay. So maybe we should start with the topic.
Okay, so topic.
Maybe
is,
because you suggested the topics, you start.
So a bit of context for how the topic came about this time. Ushna and I were talking in my office कि कौन सा what topic should we select. This is how it usually happens for the podcast. We decide कि क्या करें, think a little, brainstorm a little, and then
Come up with an
announce the
idea.
topic. So Ushna said that she remembers I once told her this story about IBMA I was studying till last year, and actually it happened last year कि in one of the classes the professor comes in and he starts teaching, and within 10 minutes he's like, I just can't focus today because I was in the hospital all night, and my young son he was really sick. So he's admitted in the hospital, so I was there. I just can't focus on the lecture today. And suddenly all the students were like, Sir, chutti de dein. So that suddenly, for a moment, that was came as a surprise to me because, well, I'm also a teacher.
Yeah.
So I think that was why
Maybe,
I had a
yes.
different
Yeah,
perspective.
definitely.
I was like, wow, ये तो बहुत यानी अभी किसी ने आपको बताया कि they were in the hospital, and the first thing you think of is in relation to what you want, in relation to the function that this person is serving in front of the class. And so that got me thinking that there does seem to be, even in my own experience, a general lack of
Empathy.
a person-to-person relationship in the classroom. Or perhaps that can be इसको हम empathy के sense में समझ सकते हैं कि it's a lack of empathy, and that has very deep-rooted effects, I think. So I started thinking about it, what kind of effects this has on education, number one, and is it a manifestation of a certain kind of thing that we're doing in the classroom? Is it because somehow the students feel alienated from the teacher, and why is that? Is it that somehow the teacher feels alienated from the student, and why is that, etc. तो मैं उस वक्त से ये बात सोच रहा था, फिर once I shared it with, I think both of you were there when I shared this story. तो फिर उष्णा ने मुझे कहा कि this might be a good, you know, empathy. We try to keep the topic broad.
Right.
तो हमने कहा चलो empathy के banner में कुछ भी जो है ना, each of us can bring in some angle into discussing this topic. Obviously, none of us are experts in this topic. We are not, you know, there's no way that we can like cover this topic or are in the position to lecture anybody or preach. So that's not the point. One of our core members, Areeb, he had like some misgivings because he thought that some things he had done went against, you know, this general like empatheticness. And so he was like, he feels uncomfortable being in the podcast. But I was like, I'll pull you in anyways in your absence by talking about you. So you might as well join, but he didn't. We're not here to lecture anybody. You could also take an anti-empathetic stance if you want. Hijab maybe.
No, but you know, like when you were talking about this, I was reminded of like school time. कि teacher absent हो जाता है, so we as students or like of course सब छोटे भी होते हैं, we don't care कि क्या मसला हुआ है, if he's sick or something, we're just like छुट्टी मिल गई, free block मिल गया, and we are looking forward to even more, you know, free time in the future. We don't care about the teacher.
काश वो रोज sick हो जाएं.
Yeah, literally, yeah. But I mean, at that time it would be a bit understandable because बच्चे होते हैं, you know, very childish stuff. But listening from you, it was like students who were doing their grad, right? So they're like properly grown up people, and still that reaction that shows like, you know, the lack of serious empathy there.
मुझे मोहिनी साहब बता रहे थे कि हमारी फैकल्टी मीटिंग्स होती हैं तो तारिक रफ़ी में, तो उसमें क्या होता है कि a lot of the faculty sit at बिल्कुल end में ना back benchers हैं, so we have like our fixed back benchers who are like the naughty faculty. तो वो सबसे पीछे बैठते हैं और वो कुछ you know ज़्यादा वो नहीं करते. They try to like work on their own stuff. Laptops होते हैं. तो मोहिनी साहब मुझे बता रहे थे कि he once was, I think he was in like this army related some meeting or something या कोई और, and there was like a class, there was like a lecture that was being given, and he was like कि 50 साल के generals थे, वो सबसे पीछे वाली सीटों पे जाके बैठ गए और jokes कर रहे थे और you know like they were like passing comments. तो we were just joking about the fact कि classroom के अंदर जाके आप भले 25 साल के 50 साल के हों, your inner devil comes out.
Interesting. Then maybe I was initially thinking when you mentioned that maybe it has something to do with education itself. I was thinking how generally as a student you're maybe detached from why you're getting this education. Maybe मैंने CS किया क्यों किया क्योंकि अम्मा अब्बा ने बोला था, मैं classroom में आ गया, अब मैं DS2 पढ़ रहा हूँ क्योंकि course curriculum में. And so you maybe are already so alienated with what you're doing in class, the degree itself, that the person who's telling you about that degree or telling you about whatever you're learning automatically maybe feels alien. Like, and I think given the fact that 50 साल में भी आप ये कह रहे होते हैं, either those 50-year-old generals weren't interested in the meeting.
It was some lecture probably.
Either that or the fact that maybe there is something fundamentally wrong with how classrooms are arranged, and how maybe the fact that there is one person standing in the middle of the room and they're out there alone and they're standing in a very special, I guess, or a different position, and then everybody else is sitting in a very sitting opposite to them. Maybe it's a very unnatural way if you think about it, from a, I guess, from how you usually interact with people. You know, वो lecture वाले setting is only made normal in, I guess, a lecture itself. So maybe, I'm thinking of.
I think you're definitely, so that's one thing. The traditional lecture where the teacher stands in the front of the room and the students are sitting and the students have to receive passively. वो active education, passive education की जो हम, you know, common words that we throw around. That has definitely something to do with it. I have also noticed another interesting thing. I don't know, but we are all CS by accident.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a very CS CS podcast.
Centric.
Yeah.
Yes.
CS people discussing non-CS things. So if you're non-CS, you should join us.
Or even CS.
We need
Another
more.
dimension.
We need like more representation.
Yeah, definitely.
But so I've noticed that in other majors, ये जो empathy का जो continuum है ना, मुझे लगता है ये it tips towards the more concrete teaching. तो जितनी teaching hands-on और concrete होती जाती है, I think students are able to better relate. और जितनी teaching abstract होती जाती है class में, उतना I feel there is. So this is one aspect, of course. I mean, जैसे Zain कह रहा है about like the traditional lecture style itself, that has something to do with it. But computer science, especially theoretical computer science, especially pure mathematics, especially something that is highly abstract, that involves formulae and it involves axioms and theorems and stuff like that, which may not directly have a practical or implementable or applicable dimension. Students alienated feel करते हैं class में काफ़ी, और फिर होता है कि वो function आपको as a function जो है I think ज़्यादा, जैसे अगर आप modernity की class में या like you're taking like a poetry class, generally what is your experience? I mean, have you experienced any difference in the way you related to the professor if they were talking about things that maybe were day to day, or maybe
I guess the thing is like when you're teaching, let's say, computer science, like data structures or maths and stuff like that, you are very less likely to talk about your personal experiences or your general life ki cheezein, right? But in such courses like modernity ho gaya, ya phir maybe core ke other courses hain, ya poetry, whatever, uske andar teachers are tend to talk about something which is beyond the classroom, which is beyond the course as well, and that creates some sort of a relationship which is closer to, let's say, DS ki teacher ke saath. And once you get closer to someone, you're more likely to feel empathy for them. Jabki all classes mein hota hai ki the teacher is there, she's there to just teach you, she's not talking about her life and stuff, and neither are you talking about it, because or usually sometimes teachers are not interested in your life, sometimes they are, but usme hota hai ki you feel like हाँ मैं सिर्फ student हूँ, and then she's just a teacher, and we stop thinking her or him as like a human being. तो फिर empathy का जो you feel empathy towards human beings or also towards animals and stuff, but like hamari setting mein the teacher is just the teacher, not someone who has life beyond your studies, and even if she has the life beyond your studies, you're not interested in it.
True. We have had teachers like of both types, just like one of our PAMSA teachers, people used to get very interested into what he's talking about his life. He used to relate things from PAMSA to his life.
Marcelo.
Okay.
Yeah.
His professor Marcelo has this thing that he try to relate things either by memes.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Or by giving example of his life in the past maybe, and he's like, I was thinking like that, and maybe you are students, so you'll be thinking like this, and just he tried to relate that thing with a meme so that maybe we can relate. So of course it shows maybe that he is putting in effort, and generally people are more interested in knowing about your personal lives. So I guess it has to do like a lot with
that wall between teacher and student, that's kind of brought down by that.
I think कि जो overall हमारा curriculum है ना, उसमें भी curriculum और फिर the way that education is structured. I'm just talking about this university, but the structure I'm talking about is general. Like it's not just in this university, but in general the structure. That also is a kind of structure that leads to a lack of empathy as well, I think, because वो पूरा structure जो है ना, and so I think as teacher, मैं from the other side of the barrier, I can say that it's not really, I feel, it's in spite of what I want that there's like this lack of, it's not that the teacher wants, and neither does the student want empathy. There's like a barrier of which cannot be bridged between the teacher or the student, and it's not just teacher student. In fact, I think तुम लोग student पे बता सकते हो ज़्यादा, or even outside of the campus if you have observed, it's almost, we can say it's the political structure itself that sort of leads to this everyone thinking in terms of their function. तो स्टूडेंट जो है वो भी एक फंक्शन है
Yeah.
और जब टीचर आ रहा है तो वो भी स्टूडेंट को नॉट फर्स्ट एज अ ह्यूमन बट फर्स्ट एज अ स्टूडेंट
Yeah.
perceive कर रहा है and vice versa the student also is first perceiving me as a teacher and only second as a human. Have you experienced something like that?
Yeah, I feel like bringing it back to, I think functions के हिसाब से अगर specifically देखें, there was a different thought that came up in my head, in terms of how, like usually there is a sense of, I guess, insecurity in how well you can perform that function whenever you're, let's say if I'm a teacher and I'm interacting, even when I'm interacting with other students, I felt that group work तब ज़्यादा अच्छा होता है when you're less human or less empathetic to the other person. You're not asking them about तुम्हारी बाकी deadlines कब हैं, but instead you're like हमने इस हफ्ते ये काम करना है, and then that's all you discuss on the group instead of like there have been groups where I've been working with my friends, and there maybe I would we would talk first about, I don't know, how's life, and then maybe talk about things in general, and then we get to work, and then that's lazier and slower. But if there's someone जहाँ पे आपने सिर्फ और सिर्फ काम की बात की है, that happens to be a lot more efficient and in a way that maybe sticks to the purpose, or it sticks to the original function of, I guess, you and like the two people that are working together. So the teacher and the student would perform the function of learning together better if there's maybe if that sense of empathy or humanness is sort of removed and you're focused on just fulfilling that function. And I think maybe in some subconscious way we're always optimizing or thinking about things इसी तरह से, and that's why maybe that empathy just on its own subconsciously is put to the side.
I mean learning का जो वो idea है, that idea itself we can put under the lens.
Maybe that's because
that's that a good idea of learning even जिसमें आप optimize कर रहे हैं productivity को.
Right.
I think maybe that's because हम learning को as we haven't really understood what learning should look like. Maybe there is supposed to be more human aspects of that learning as well. हमें शायद, as you were saying earlier, ये curriculum जो हमें दिया हुआ है, education का जो structure है, that alienates you, I guess, from the world, and then it tells you कि oh, embrace the world in terms of these other things as well. But it tells you to be not empathetic, and then it tells you, oh, humans are supposed to be empathetic. So maybe that's how classrooms have been working, should we say.
I also think it comes down to like some people who are not really interested in learning, but वो इसलिए आ रहे हैं because उनको degree चाहिए. So of course their intention is to get the degree for the sake of job, right? So उनके लिए उनका मकसद है just degree, right? So of course I think वहाँ पर भी it's kind of your priority that okay, you're done with class, you'll be home. Okay, and 4 साल बाद you'll be done with your degree, right? तो उसके बीच में you don't have to maybe think about other people for XYZ reasons. I can't, I mean I have met people who are like बस degree complete करनी है, and I always tell them that okay, but where's your learning in this? They're like
क्या करना है पर learning का? I'll play the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
That's how all of our brains are treated, right? Like,
yeah, I think it's the education system, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
but
which you just mentioned.
So, but hey, this is a genuine question that a lot of people asking कि हमें पैसे कमाने हैं ना?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, is that not the case with you?
I mean, see, the thing is, why just have one thing in mind? Like, अगर साथ में आप learn भी कर रहे हो, so it's not like कोई harm नहीं हो रहा, it's just like added bonus, right?
Okay.
At the end of the day, you're gonna earn money, right? But having something else added to your personality and to your life and be a good human, it's not causing any harm to you, it's just something which is added bonus. That why not just, use that and learn stuff? Why just stick with, just getting degree and getting the money?
I think this is what which differentiates us from the machines.
Yeah.
There's a course these days, Ethics of AI, जो हो रहा है जिसमें they are discussing whether we are different from
Machines are not.
AI, whether human intelligence is different. Quite fascinating.
Yeah,
Check it out.
Huh. I got another aspect as well about this empathy thing. I think एक और चीज़ होती है, which is like you can say, मतलब, let's say if like a teacher's is not feeling good, and I go to him and ask him or her like how are you feeling, or if you're not feeling good, other people are gonna call me teacher's pet.
Yeah.
say yeah. So
Right.
इस image की वजह से भी a lot of people
Don't
are like
feel-
I don't want to feel empathy for the teacher because I don't want to be named the teacher's pet.
Yeah.
तो एक image बना हुआ है कि if you try to be more empathic towards teacher, well not just that कुछ लोग वाकई teacher's pet होते हैं, but जो लोग नहीं होते हैं we're just like literally humans and you're asking about teacher's life as well, just wondering if he's doing good or not. उनको भी you get labeled as teacher's pet. So maybe one of the reasons that people, like students are not as empathetic towards teachers is because they fear being labeled that. So yeah.
I think it's also the sense of professional boundaries that subconsciously just exists. Okay, oh, is it even appropriate if I ask them about their
Exactly,
personal
yeah.
life?
True.
Should I heard कि अच्छा हाँ their son was sick or something. You're referring to your instructor. Would it be appropriate if you go up to them and then ask them what happened to them? Yeah, would they be comfortable discussing that? So I think already that sense of formal boundaries, your professional boundaries you establish subconscious. Yeah, I think those unspoken boundaries that have been established, they sort of make it less feasible for it to be.
In fact, I think teachers खुद भी establish कर रहे हैं.
Yeah.
So नहीं, जाहिर है हम हबीब के context में बात कर रहे हैं. Someone listening to this might feel कि यार मेरी uni में तो
ऐसा नहीं है.
ये इससे बहुत ज़्यादा है. इससे
अच्छा,
यानी
बहुत
like
है,
if you increase the size of the classroom, ये just the
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
just multiplies.
Definitely.
So I mean, you can just imagine in other universities where the classrooms are larger. This is like on a larger scale, this problem is circulating on campus. We are in that way privileged. However, I think the essence of the problem is the same. Classroom छोटी हो, बड़ी हो, privileged हो, non-privileged हो, etc. What's interesting, Zain, जो तुम कह रहे थे कि in fact because I am on the other side, so I am also a teacher. तो मेरे लिए तो it was not. मैं तो फौरन उनसे पूछ लिया अपने टीचर से कि आप ठीक हैं, आप बैठ जाएं, मैं like कुछ आपको चाहिए, पानी ला दूं. I can also get you chai from upstairs. So for me it was like a completely like immediately like I related like a colleague almost, not almost exactly like a colleague to him, and I was like आप बैठ जाएं.
Was it because like you're a teacher, so you
Maybe
know
you're
that
feeling
like
enough.
you don't have those boundaries which we as students assume कि teacher ने वो boundaries रखी हैं. Maybe that was the reason that you were able to do it, because it has happened with me, like one teacher had a total meltdown and I was worried about the teacher for sure, but I was like, shall I go
क्या
and
करना
ask
चाहिए?
if doing okay or not? But I was like, maybe the person wouldn't really like that, so I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Though I was genuinely concerned for the person. So that's about that, like those unmentioned or already told boundaries that we assumed in our heads, and it comes from childhood, like from the very in schools as well. We are told ना like teacher ki you just have like class के अंदर आई हैं, पढ़ा के चली गई.
Yeah.
That's just it. You are not to discuss it or bring your personal life into it. Or usually even teachers, very few teachers are like that, who would ask you if you don't look good, they'll definitely come and ask you if you're doing okay or not. While the rest of the teachers are like okay with it, and they just come teach and go. तो वो वाली चीज़ आ जाती है.
Yeah, speaking of that, I think it's also because कि बहुत सारे students हैं, right, in university especially, a lot of teachers are like अभी तो आप बहुत छोटे लेवल पे हैं, जब आप प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में आएंगे तो बहुत सारे मसले होंगे etc. But I think some people are already in their maybe practical lives, as in के they are doing their side hustles, right? Maybe taking care of their parents or having not a good mental state. So I think teachers also have to be careful about the fact that some students are already in their practical lives, and they also show some empathy towards them.
Yeah, teachers showing empathy towards students.
This is
The ball is back
the way
in the
around.
court.
so yeah, this because I have personally experienced this thing as well, because मैं बहुत सारे teachers के साथ I've, because of obvious reasons, बहुत सारे schools में पढ़ी हूँ, तो बहुत सारे teachers के साथ I've interacted. So there's मेरे लिए a teacher's how the person is interacting with you matters a lot. It's upon priority होती है. जैसे मेरे कुछ friends हैं, they're like, I mean it doesn't matter as long as you are getting your degree and आपको पढ़ा रहे हैं तो बस that's it. मेरे लिए it's not just it. If I'm, let's suppose, because I have a problem of asking a lot of questions, I'm very inquisitive. So a lot of teachers don't like it. They may be like, "Shad time zaya kariye class ka," and all. So I guess
Which you are.
no, never. But yeah, तो teacher की थोड़ी empathy की ज़रूरत है. वो भी एक aspect है.
Yeah, I was kidding about the questions. There's no question that's a bad question, guys.
No stupid questions. Yeah, there is
there
a
are no
whole
stupid
podcast.
questions.
This is the podcast name.
Yeah, and there are no stupid questions on this
I would like
podcast
to hear
either. But by the way, so for those who don't know, Ushna keh rahi thi ke for obvious reasons she has been in several schools. That's because she's initially from Asghar,
Yeah.
and she has moved here and like
Yeah,
back and forth
yeah.
kiya isne kuch और different schools में पढ़ा है.
Yes, definitely. I have been traveling all my life, so yeah.
I think teachers, the lack of empathy from teachers towards students can be, I'm not justifying it, but I think sometimes it's because they get exploited a lot by the kids. A lot. I have seen that. Like the teachers who are lenient, kids just exploit them so much that they come to a point that then they're like, okay, fine, I'm going to be strict and I'm going to be the teacher, jo, you know, just strict se teachers होते हैं, class में आते हैं, काम किया चले गए. I think, not saying कि वो सही चीज़ है कि नहीं है, I don't know from the teacher's aspect, but kids, other kids who don't genuinely need, you know, let's say extensions or या फिर different favors and stuff, they exploit the teacher जो empathetic होता है towards them, और वो इस हद तक exploit कर देते हैं कि then the teacher is like, okay fine, my empathy is getting, you know, it's like getting exploited, so he's like, okay fine, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And I've seen that with some teachers as well in the university.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like हमारे कुछ lenient teachers
Yeah.
have become a little strict. They are like, no, तुम लोग ऐसे नहीं
Like
समझ
let's say
रहे.
like last like I took
Two
courses in 2 semesters from the same teacher. In the first semester he was like very chill about, you know, deadlines and the quizzes and stuff like that, and in the second semester he just totally changed. He was like nahi
Very
quiz ke
strict.
andar bahut ऐसा होगा and you
Yeah.
cannot cheat and stuff. And that point I realized because there were kids in my class like who were, you know, wouldn't submit on time without any reason at all. But उसकी वजह से ये हुआ कि like let's say I was, you know, we are CS kids और core के लिए हमारे लिए बहुत मुश्किल होता है when we have essays and we have like 3 projects as well. So we were genuinely in need of the extension, but we were afraid to ask him for the extension because of what he already established in the very first class. So उसकी वजह से, you know, the people who need that empathy, they suffer.
I think this goes back to how a system is understood maybe. Because for us, the reason why some students would exploit, like why would you exploit a teacher's leniency in the first place is maybe because you don't, maybe because you're not in it for the learning.
Right.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
like most kids that would have क्या कहते हैं जिन्होंने regular extension मांगनी थी. I'm literally one of them जिसको हमेशा extension मांगनी होती. But that's maybe because I think this semester मुझे बिल्कुल भी ज़्यादा ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ी. And I think maybe that's because I've had much more balanced courses. इससे पहले CS मैं हर semester 6 courses लेके चल रहा हूँ. And that meant maybe that सारी deadlines एक साथ आ रही होती
Oh
हैं.
yeah.
And I think all of us can at this point relate with that, right? And maybe in that moment you're thinking less about your learning and more about अच्छा इस assignment को पूरा करके कैसे आगे बढ़ना है.
True.
And so maybe the system itself is designed to encourage you to just focus on submitting that assignment
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
thinking about how you're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
And that sort of creates a loop of where you're thinking of everything as a non-human maybe obstacle or object. Like the teacher is an actor that is supposed to determine deadline kab hai. And these are the factors that I can change to convince them that deadline up kar dein versus up kar dein. Rather than thinking about rather than thinking about the relationship in a more human way. Imagine maybe if you are, maybe when you have to meet a friend or something, उस वक्त maybe you said कि हाँ इस हफ्ते मिल लेते हैं, and then you delayed it कि अच्छा इस हफ्ते कुछ और काम आ गया तो अगले हफ्ते मिल लेते हैं. But that sort of delaying or that sort of asking for that's asking for an extension essentially, right? But that happens to have a very different dynamic versus asking for an extension in an assignment or a course or something. And maybe that's because of how empathetic or how humanly, I guess, we look at the other side.
We can, I think, also broaden our scope of discussion and include so many other people on campus to which this topic can be extended. I'm thinking about the support staff.
Yeah.
So many other services that different people are providing on campus, such as the security, the cafeteria, the transport, etc., etc. बहुत सारी हैं. And we can then further broaden it to non-human beings on campus, such as the pigeons and the cats, and you know. So, and why I bring this up right now is because while Zain was speaking of the structure that somehow, you know, incentivizes this thing, कि empathy ना हो, तो यही चीज़ जो है फिर, for example, अब I mean, I think maybe the example of animals might be an eye roll for some, but to me it's not. I'm quite passionate about that. But if we talk about the support staff, I mean, how many of us notice that they're around? They're serving quite a peripheral, you know, in all senses, peripheral kind of a. With their visibility is peripheral. And they are of the same age as us. What's, you know, like they could have been students here, but they're not. They lead drastically different lives from us. Once I did this survey of all of the support staff. I'm talking about the red shirts. And it turned out that on average they get around 5 hours of sleep, which is, I mean, that has got to lead to some functional impairment on in your daily life. Like 5 घंटे की आप रोज sleep अगर कर रहे हैं consistently, that has got to lead to functional impairment. And so these are people who are not even fully functional, and through so many different ways of how the norms are on campus, we don't get to interact with them, and are actively discouraged, in fact, from doing so.
Yes, exactly. You know, like I've noticed this, you know, just saying salam to the, like, you know, agar like there's this woman who is there, like, you know, they're in washrooms or near different places. If you just say salam to them and, you know, just talk about if they're doing good or not, it makes them feel good. You know, they're interested in you, then they ask you as well kya aapki kya halat hai and stuff like that. Also, but you know, someone told me that they are not allowed to talk to students. So even when they're asking us time, they're very scared, you know, time pushne se pehle. So I've had a lot of instances like that. So I don't know why are they not allowed to talk to us. They're not doing anything. They're just saying, you know, just saying hi to each other. And I think that would make them feel good, like, you know, they're not invisible. Because, you know, imagine people, like, every hour there's so many people coming in and they don't even look at you or do anything at all, and you're constantly serving them, right? It's pretty much horrific for you, for your mental state and everything. So if we just go and say hi to them, what's the issue there if they're just trying to talk back?
Yeah, I had no idea that you were actively discouraged from, because I literally, I think Ushna ne bhi wajood mein classes shayad li hain.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And those are instances where we actively sit with them in classes, and we act as teachers, and in fact they sometimes act as teachers, and we learn from each other. And uske alawa, I know that I haven't taught for like 2 semesters, and usually when I'm going around campus, if I meet someone that has been in my class, we have a 5-minute conversation just that I would have with any other friend on campus. And I personally have not ever been told, okay, don't talk to the TC staff.
Right.
So, no, I wasn't told. The person said that she is not allowed to talk.
So I might have worded it wrong. What I meant is that somehow there is a discouragement. वो यानी हम तो उनसे approach कर सकते हैं, I suppose. But उनकी तरफ से there is somewhere there is an active discouragement.
Interesting.
And there is discouragement systematically as well. So which may not be verbal. But in other forms it's there. There's obviously economic discouragement and other kinds.
I think I might have the answer for hijab, as she was asking why is it like they are discouraged to speak to us. Maybe because I have witnessed an incident that a girl, you know, हमें पता है कि society कैसी है. We live in Pakistan, right? तो ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता ना कि like you are at Habib and it's a different society. तो आपका पाकिस्तान से बिल्कुल ताल्लुक ही ख़त्म हो जाएगा, राइट? तो ठीक है, वो सेम सोसाइटी से आती हैं. तो देयर वाज दिस गर्ल, उसको एक सपोर्ट स्टाफ ने आई थिंक कह दिया था कि लाइक ओ आपको एक्ने है तो यू शुड डू दिस. तो उस पर बहुत बैकलैश हुआ था. एंड शी वाज लाइक आई विल मेक श्योर कि दिस विल नेवर हैपन अगेन. सो मे बी अब उनके मे बी एज अ सपोर्ट स्टाफ मैं किसी को देख रही हूँ तो मैं भी अब लाइक कि अच्छा इनको बता दूँ तो शायद इनकी बेहतर हो जाए तो इनको ज़्यादा अच्छा लगे. तो आई मीन उनका पर्सपेक्टिव दोनों का डिफरेंट होगा. आई एम नॉट सेइंग द वन इज़ रॉन्ग एंड द अदर इज़ नॉट, बट आई थिंक मे बी दैट्स वाई दे आर डिस्करेज कि ठीक है भाई अब आपको कुछ बोलना ही नहीं है उनके साथ, कुछ भी नहीं कहें क्योंकि मे बी उनको बुरा लग जाता है तो इट्स नॉट यू नो. सो
फॉर देयर ओन
देयर कुड बी एनी नंबर ऑफ रीजंस. कुछ भी हो सकता है. अब व्हाट इज गोइंग थ्रू देयर माइंड मुझे नहीं पता, बट या
दिस इज वन ऑफ द
है. तो आई मीन एक there is a gap. That's what I notice.
Also, I mean, we are talking about university the whole time. If we take it a bit outside, or you know, university बाद घर आते हैं, let's say, I think बचपन में तो of course we are not empathic towards our parents at all, right? But when we grow up, I have seen recently a lot that kids are no more empathic towards their parents.
अच्छा.
Or like हमारी generation के and Gen Z as well, ठीक है? They're not empathic towards their parents because we just think ke, you know, you like let's take an example. You go back home, you're tired and stuff, and something is not up to your taste. You're gonna throw a tantrum, right?
Okay. And not me.
Okay. Sorry there. But like yeah. So and when you do that, your parents are so kind and nice that they're not gonna scold you at that time. But thing is, a very few people would later realize that they did wrong and go back to their parents and say sorry, or maybe you know realize that शायद उनकी गलती नहीं थी. You were just going off, or maybe they were tired, they were sick or something. That's why something that you wanted wasn't up to your taste, right? But that's where you know you like empathy for your parents. It's like parents are just there to do their job to bring you up, but the more you grow, I guess the more you start to become empathic towards them because you know you get into the practical life and you start realizing अच्छा शायद इस वजह से बंदा थक जाता है, so maybe they are tired as well. तो जो I guess जो main teenage life होती है उसके अंदर the kids are not empathic towards their parents at all.
I think maybe what you're sort of hinting towards is how as people grow older or as a child grows older, they increase in their ability to relate with, let's say, their parents.
Yeah.
And I think often when someone would be throwing a tantrum, that might be because you could say, no offense intended, but you could say that they haven't matured as much to be able to understand things from their parents' perspective or whoever else is involved in the situation from someone else's perspective. And I think like it's a common thing that we generally tend to hear, especially as you mentioned with our generation. I think it just in general at this point, I guess, people are just less mature, and hence maybe you could also say that they're also less empathetic, and maybe those two things do have something to do in common with each other.
People are less mature now, like in general, like
I guess to be honest,
you know, like if I go through, maybe that's because you have more access to.
Yeah, we are more privileged, so like. I think when you don't have as much privileges and you have to do so many things by yourself and you know you do mature much quicker than normal people.
I mean, I don't particularly entirely agree with this statement, but one way to explain that people are less or more mature is you could say that common proverb, I guess, that's thrown around. Hard times make, I guess...
Hard people?
Like hard times make more capable individuals and softer privileged times or easier times cause people to be more lethargic, lazy or ineffective.
Yeah, koi, you know, like आपकी life में कोई difficult चीज हो तो you will become, you know,
they mature
you will rise up to the occasion, etc., etc. Often we also hear this in poetry, etc.
Exactly. So I think maybe that it has something to do with that. A lot of the gap between privilege that we have in society in general at this point means that a lot of people just haven't seen the other side of the coin the way maybe you could have a couple of years ago. Like you just, I think maybe that in some ways, just I feel like when I was living, when I have outside of Pakistan, you can clearly see that you would usually not interact with someone who has a very different economic privilege as you would get to in Pakistan. आप पाकिस्तान में कहीं भी कराची में specifically आपने अगर यूनिवर्सिटी भी आना होता है so you have to go through let's say अगर आप बहुत privileged इलाके से भी आ रहे हैं तो you have to pass through Pehलवान Court, you have to go through the rest of this.
इतना gentrified नहीं है.
Exactly. So
the
you
other places.
Precisely. So you get that exposure जहाँ पे you get to see different people's lives.
Right.
Even जब आपके घर पे house help आता है तो there might be a very drastic difference between the way you lead your life versus your house help, and that sort of opens you up to a different perspective on how someone else might be living their life, and maybe that makes you slightly more empathetic, or at least that gives you an opportunity to be slightly more empathetic. I felt like beyond in a society that is not like Pakistan, maybe if you have a more privileged, a more developed society, you would not maybe get this experience. I know for sure that when I was studying in dorms inside of China somewhere, वहाँ पे we would not get this sort of exposure कि आपके जो support staff होते थे, they were not as like the whole place was overall in general वहाँ एक higher sense of privilege था. We specifically went to a different different part of China, a different part of that province, to see, acha, this is what underprivileged in China looks like, and that was like, that's something that you won't get.
There are although people here whose parents actively discourage them from leaving DHA. I personally know them. Sadly, like they say, nahi aap defense se bahar nahi jayenge.
Oh my god. Such a close life.
Maybe because they are just being overprotective.
Well, yeah, kind of sometimes.
Empathy.
Sure.
That's
So-
empathy.
Yeah, right there.
And I think that leads me to something that I was mentioning earlier as well, how empathy, the reason why empathy is often erased is maybe because there's some sense of insecurity in that situation somewhere. Take this example, when you can't leave DHA because maybe your parents are insecure about the fact that once you leave this place, you have no idea how safe the rest of the area is. Or maybe when your instructors, when you're not empathetic with your instructor, maybe you don't ask them
How are you or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would happen because you didn't feel safe enough in knowing कि हम professional boundaries can't draw कर रहे हैं. So there's always there's some reason why there's some sort of insecurity that maybe I think causes this lack of empathy somewhere or the other.
Is it on a broader, like taking a step back and asking, क्या इसकी value क्या है? I mean, this is also a very, like, I think foundational issue. Like, क्या है value empathy की? I mean, in our lives. Is it necessary? Is it something that is
super important, I guess. Yes.
It's super important.
Yes.
Why though?
I mean, why not?
I mean, why not make
I
it
feel
okay?
it is very much necessary, because if I think about it, and let's say everyone in my life stops having empathy, I wouldn't have relationships with people that I have. Like the relationship which I have with my friend, I no more would have the same relationship, because empathy brings people closer as well and makes our life easier as well. So let's imagine nobody has empathy towards you, your life will be very much difficult. So it becomes like as if something which has to be there for you to live a bit of a peaceful life.
So what about, I mean, again, playing the devil's advocate, those people who say okay, empathy can be completely replaced with a technocratic rational order where your function is determined to such an extent that there is no need to think or respond consciously to anybody. Your function is fully determined in that technocratic society, let's suppose, and we can completely do away with interpersonal conflict, interpersonal conscious, like any need for like any kind of interpersonal resolution of sorts. So would that be an interesting? Would you like to live in that?
It
like,
reminds me of movies. There are these movies which are made in which they have made this whole society which lacks these human attributes. Like empathy is one of the very much important attribute of a human being, and they lack that. But I think you cannot stop a human from having any empathy at all. No matter how ruthless the person is, that person would have empathy towards something in life. Else would we call that person a human? I don't know, because in that movie what they showed was they kept it like that, but there was this group of people who became friends and had empathy for each other, and they just turned down the whole system.
Okay.
So they kind of showed like you cannot force human beings to be inhuman, because I think complete lack of empathy would lead to being inhuman in general. I guess.
What movie was this?
I just can't remember the name. I would look it up and tell you. But it was a very good movie.
Hitler भी piano बजाता था or something. Like he was he was also
Yeah, there would
interested
be
in some
something.
पता नहीं classical music or what. Really passionate about it.
Yeah.
I mean, going with that idea of if you could do away with empathy, I think that would mean that you kind of have some version of that, let's say even in classrooms, right?
Right.
Where you have defined everybody's functions, and that determines कि आपने क्लास में आके अगर आप खामोशी से भी बैठ रहे हैं और maybe जब सवाल पूछा जाए आप हाथ उठा के जवाब दे रहे हैं, that means you're fulfilling your function. If let's say the teacher seems down, you're not functionally required to ask the teacher how they're doing.
Right.
Or if a peer even seems down, you don't actually, there's nothing making it obligatory upon you to ask them why they're feeling the way they are, or why are they down or something. So I feel like maybe that is, I mean that we're partly living in that society already, right? Just turn it up a little more, and then is that really so bad? Like going back to
in fact, that's why hence I use the word technocratic. There is something to do with like the way that the rational order is progressing. I mean, हम देख रहे हैं ये. I mean, we are in frameworks, interpersonal frameworks, which try to remove empathy. Like Zain pointed out कि हमारी classroom में हो रहा है ये. तो ये हो रहा है ना, और हम prefer भी कर रहे हैं इसको. हम चाह रहे हैं कि ऐसा हो जाए कि थोड़ा order जो है ना वो एक तरीके से हम maintain कर दें.
But we also discussed like the downsides of it.
Yeah.
So I think turning it up to that extent would be too crazy. Maybe
I
we
mean,
need to
what
wrap it up.
exactly are? Oh yeah, what exactly would those downsides be, right?
Imagine not having anyone ask you about like how are you. I mean, I feel very lonely.
But maybe that's because we've been used to empathy. If we just take that away, maybe there was this I think Megan Abhi 2022 की एक movie है, in which you have.
It's called Megan.
Megan. There's a movie called Megan.
That's like the name of the girl, Megan.
Yeah, so I think there's a child whose parents die, and she's taken up by her aunt, I think, and the aunt in fact works at this dystopian-ish toy company that creates very fancy and cool toys and stuff. One of the things that the aunt comes up with is a AI robot, which can sort of learn and grow and improve and essentially be a caretaker for the child. And I guess one of the points that the movie does try to tackle is how that AI robot child eventually sort of takes up the role of parenting that the aunt was supposed to play. And I mean, it ties it up neatly near the end. But like if you just look at it from that perspective, where does that go, right? You could have, at some point, you could have robots that could just ask you about how you're feeling. You don't really need to have real human empathy. Like someone, at this point, ChatGPT could have a normal conversation with you, where you would maybe have the impression that, oh, it feels something, it cares about you. You have that gap of empathy which has been created for us fulfilled. Maybe down the line, 50 years down the line, you could have normal human beings that don't need that empathy. Like I'm not advocating for no empathy, but I'm asking you, what are we exactly losing there?
Right, and there's also this other angle that we can take on it, which is that empathy is a kind of emotion that biases us towards certain people. For example, empathy can bias me towards my friends. It can bias me towards my family members. It can bias me towards my neighbors over other people. So I might be more empathetic towards my family than I am towards someone who is across the globe. On the other hand, a rational conception of, a rational morality, let's say, would, in that system, I would be equally concerned. Like it would be a system of care that equally distributes concern across all of the actors. So no one would be, have to be more careful about their family than towards, this is like, again, might seem quite abstract and quite
I think
inhuman,
this is something we
almost,
can talk
inhuman.
about ours about.
But could, like, these are just like, although I'm also like more convinced in favor of empathy
Yeah,
than
definitely.
this is just
Me
like
too.
maybe a thought experiment. But yeah, there's something very human about it. Like
Yes.
it's hard to like get away from it.
Yeah, separating human and
The technology, for example, is also a tool that can both lead to empathy and also like a lack of. For example, we're having this podcast in the film studio and looking at a camera instead of an actual audience
Yeah.
that could be sitting here, or instead of like just a bunch of us sitting around a table and having a discussion. So in this way, we are also removed from the people who would eventually watch this. Of course, we are talking, but there are also, by the way, other people in the room who are assisting us, without whom the podcast would be impossible. That's
Yeah.
Asad,
Definitely.
and I'm so sorry, Maria, and Hassan, and Mehek. So there are 4 people with us, and there are 4 in front of the camera, 4 behind the camera. So I think हम इसको wrap up करते
yeah,
हैं,
definitely.
because no one's gonna listen to the such a long discussion on
Yes.
empathy. So any final thoughts? Has anyone been convinced for or against empathy?
It was such a little,
Yeah.
like small discussion to be convinced for.
We can talk, I think, hours and hours
Yeah.
on this. But I think if there was less empathy, there would have more deaths.
More what?
Deaths.
Deaths?
Yes.
Like debt, as in जिसमें पाकिस्तान पड़ गया अब?
I think when death,
I'm
Deaths.
just kidding.
D-A-T-H.
More people would die,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. जैसे humans
Like
help
violence
each other.
ज़्यादा होगा.
Yeah. Humans help each other, right? If you don't have empathy, किसी की
Okay.
गाड़ी रुक गई है, पेट्रोल खत्म हो गया है, and you are not
Okay, so
helping them.
It's a means of survival.
Yes. I think ज़्यादा deaths होते हैं. Deaths, not the death.
Debt भी हो सकती है ज़्यादा.
Yeah.
हाँ वैसे ये
Without
सही
empathy.
A more hostile society in general, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, let's wrap it up here. Once again, I will remind you that please join us if you would like. We will post the next topic. Where will we post the next topic? On Yammer? On forum?
No, then Yammer we had.
Yammer pe no one sees
Yeah.
it, so maybe forum
Forum,
will post the
yeah.
next topic, or you can also suggest a topic in the comments of the video, or you can catch us on campus and suggest us a topic, and also please join us. So anybody, if you're a student, a staff, or a faculty member, you can also come and film with us in the studio here. So we'll let you know the time, and you can let us know any topic
Yeah.
that you would like to talk about.
Thank you for
Alright.
watching.